This episode is brought to you by Sterling Soap Company. How often do you think about your soap? Well, if you answered, not much, maybe you should. You see, a lot of what passes for soap in stores is technically not soap, according to the FDA's definition. It's full of lab-created chemicals and detergents because, well, it's cheaper to make. Now, what if you could buy natural soap made from natural ingredients like tallow, palm oil, coconut oil, and scented with essential oils, and for just a little more than you'd pay for grocery store soap? Sterling Soap is 100% natural, and with a wide variety of bath soaps, shave soaps, beard balm, lotions, and cologne, there's a product and a scent for just about everybody. Check them out for yourself at sterlingsoap.com. That's STIRLING soap.com.
Hey there, sports history fan. This is Darren Hayes, host of the Pigskin Dispatch and Jersey Dispatch podcast. I hope you've enjoyed another great episode here on Sports History Network. Now, speaking of sports history, this episode was brought to you by Firefly Books, and they have two great ones for you this summer. For basketball fans, they have the NBA 75, the definitive history by author Dave Zarum, who's appeared on our Jersey Dispatch podcast recently. He tells about the experience, the thrilling journey of the NBA, from its humble beginnings to its modern glory. Uncover the untold stories of triumph, controversy, and the greatest stars of the game. This isn't just a book. It's courtside seats to over 75 years of NBA history. And for the golf enthusiasts, swing into The Golf Round I'll Never Forget by Matt Adams. Relive 50 of golf's most memorable moments through the eyes of the legends themselves. From Garcia's triumph at the 2017 Masters to Nicklaus' miraculous 1986 comeback, it's the closest you'll get to walking the fairways with golf's greatest. Get your summer read on. Grab a copy of NBA 75 or The Golf Round I'll Never Forget, available online or at your favorite bookstore.
This is Basketball History 101 with Rick Loayza.
Welcome back to award-winning Basketball History 101, part of the Sports History Network. I'm your host, Rick Loayza, and this is the podcast where we bring to life some of the forgotten stories from basketball history. We are bringing old school basketball to a new school audience, and today we bring you the story of the NBA's original Big Three. Now, in order to do that, we have to go all the way back to the late 1940s when the NBA was in its infancy. So we are talking about the second and third year of the NBA's existence. Back then, the world was still recovering from World War II. The American economy was still in the process of building up steam into what would become an economic golden age of the 1950s. Men wore suits and fedoras when out in public, and women wore dresses and heels just to shop for groceries. Universities were exploding with new students. The suburbs, as we understand them today, were just starting to develop. Actors like Gary Cooper, Cary Grant, Jimmy Stewart, Katharine Hepburn, Ingrid Bergman, Humphrey Bogart, and Lauren Bacall were dominating the silver screen. Practically every adult smoked cigarettes, and families gathered around the radio in the evenings to listen to their favorite show. And that is the context for the NBA's first Big Three. The combination of George Mikan, Jim Pollard, and Vern Mikkelson. And they starred for the Minneapolis Lakers. All three players are in the Hall of Fame, and they dominated the NBA starting in 1948 until 1954, when age and declining skill ended their run of 5 championships in 6 years. But before we dig into the story of the Minneapolis Big Three, let us review some of the other Big Threes in NBA history. And it seems that there is a minor obsession with the concept of the Big Three in the NBA. Each year, as some players become free agents, there is an explosion of conversation and conjecture about where certain players will land, and will we see a new Big Three? Probably the most controversial Big Three ever was the combination of LeBron James, Dwayne Wade, and Chris Bosh, who all played together for the Miami Heat from 2010 until 2014. They only played together for 4 years, but they went to the NBA Finals in all 4 years, winning 2 championships in 2012 and 2013. There was the famous Celtics combination of Kevin Garnett, Paul Pierce, and Ray Allen, who won the 2008 championship. Then there was arguably the best outside shooting combination of all time with Steph Curry, Kevin Durant, and Klay Thompson, who won 2 championships in 2017 and 2018. If we go back further into history, we have Michael Jordan, Scottie Pippen, and Dennis Rodman, arguably the best defensive big three in NBA history, as they won championships in 1996, 1997, and 1998. And if we go further back to the 80s, there was the Lakers combination of Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, Magic Johnson, and James Worthy, who won 3 championships together. The same for the Celtics combination of Larry Bird, Kevin McHale, and Robert Parrish, who also won 3 championships together and are considered by many to be the greatest front court of all time. Well, the players at the center of our story can also make a case for being the greatest front court of all time, and that is simply because the big three of the Minneapolis Lakers played center, power forward, and small forward. So let us take a deeper look at who these 3 players were. Now, the big man at the center of everything was George Mikan. And I have mentioned Mikan in previous episodes a number of times. Mikan was at one time considered the greatest basketball player of all time. He was 6'10" and the tallest player ever at the time that he joined the league. He was a college superstar for DePaul University in Chicago, and he then joined the Lakers in the autumn of 1948 and played for the Lakers until 1956, with 1 year off due to retirement before returning for one final season. He averaged 23 points per game, which was massive back in that day when teams rarely scored even 80 points per game. Mikan only played 7 seasons in the NBA and won the championship 5 times. That is a strong career. The man at small forward was Jim Pollard, who was 6'4" and known as the Kangaroo Kid. Now, no disrespect to Billy Cunningham, who was also known as the Kangaroo Kid in the 1960s, but this was still the 1940s. Pollard was a star player at Stanford before joining the other league called the NBL, but then that league merged with the NBA, and Pollard ended up on the Minneapolis Lakers. He was a 4-time All-Star, a Hall of Famer, and one of the great players of his day. Just like Mikan, Pollard had also played only 7 seasons in the NBA and won 5 championships. In fact, Mikan and Pollard won all 5 of their championships together. Pollard averaged 13 points and 8 rebounds per game to support the effort. Now, the third member of the trio was Vern Mikkelson, but his story will take a little bit longer. Mikkelson grew up in Minnesota and went to college at Hamline University, which was an NAIA school at the time. And for those that do not know, the NAIA is essentially the 4th division of university sports in America. His nickname was the Great Dane because of his Danish heritage. He absolutely dominated the game at Hamline. It was quite obvious that he was one of the top players in the country despite playing in a lower division. He was drafted by the Minneapolis Lakers and joined their team in the autumn of 1949. Now, this means that Mikan and Pollard had already won a championship together at the time that Mikkelson joined the squad. Therefore, Mikkelson was only part of 4 of the 5 championships during those George Mikan days. But without Mikkelson, they may not have won all of those championships. At 6'7", Mikkelson had always played the center position because he was always the tallest player in his team until he reached the NBA. So let me share a bit of a side story here for a moment. In today's NBA, there are currently 70 players who are legitimately 7 feet tall or taller. But again, back in the 1940s, Mikan was the tallest player in league history at 6'10". Most other centers around the league were 6'8", 6'7", or even as short as 6'6". Therefore, since Mikkelson had always played center, he joined the team as Mikan's backup. But only partway through the first season with Mikkelson on the team, coach John Kundla had a radical idea. And I really mean this. He came up with the idea that nobody had ever had before. So because of the slow start to the season, he had to figure out a way to give Mikkelson more minutes on the court. But he could not just sub out Mikan because that would have not made any sense. The idea that he had was to play both of his centers at the same time. He would play Mikan at the center like normal, but he would then play Mikkelson at the forward position. Now, this breakout idea was to have 2 pivot players on the court at the same time, which was absolutely radical for that time. And this was something that nobody had ever even heard of, at least not in the 1940s. Way before Ralph Sampson and Akeem Olajuwon, this was the original Twin Towers lineup. So John Kundla had come up with a way that both big men could play together without getting in each other's way, because that was naturally the main concern. And what he came up with was the idea of the power forward. There was no such thing as a power forward before Vern Mikkelson. See, basketball back in the 1940s was far simpler than it is today. The typical NBA lineup consisted of one center, two forwards, and two guards. There was no distinction between the two forwards and no distinction between the two guards. Nobody back then would have known what you were talking about if you asked which guy is the point guard and which guy is the shooting guard. In the same way, they would have had no idea what you were asking if you asked which guy is the small forward and which guy is the power forward. So Vern Mikkelson became the league's very first power forward, and he had a very specific role. His job was to grab rebounds, play defense, score primarily off putbacks, and basically be a complement to what Mikan was doing. And he thrived in this role. He averaged 14 points and 9 rebounds per game in that role and made the All-Star team 6 times in 10 seasons. The combination of Mikan, Mikkelson, and Pollard was one of the strongest lineups the young NBA had ever seen. They were virtually unbeatable. The Minneapolis Lakers absolutely owned the interior on both offense and defense. The first year that they were together, they led the league with 51 wins in 68 games. They averaged a scorching 84 points per game on the season and took home the 1950 NBA championship. The Lakers' Big Three averaged 50 points per game as a trio. This Lakers front court accounted for 60% of the offense. In 1951, the Lakers were not able to win the whole thing, mostly because Mikan was battling injuries the entire season. But in 1952, the Lakers were back to secure the first three-peat in league history. They only won 40 games in a 66-game season, but caught fire in the playoffs, and they defeated the Knicks in the finals. In 1953, they led the league with 48 wins in a 70-game season and defeated the New York Knicks again in the finals. Then in 1954, they led the league in victories once more. They won 46 games in a 72-game season, and they defeated the Syracuse Nationals in the finals for the first three-peat in league history. Then, that is when George Mikan retired at the young age of just 29 years old. His body was already starting to fall apart, and it was time for him to walk off into the sunset. Without Mikan, the combination of Pollard and Mikkelson were not able to win any more championships. But again, they had already won 5 championships in 6 seasons, which was a fantastic run by any measure. The following year, Pollard also retired, which left Mikkelson as the only star remaining. Mikkelson played 4 more seasons without Pollard and Mikan and went to a couple of more All-Star games. But the Lakers were just a shadow of their former selves. Mikkelson retired at the end of the 1959 season, and that was it for the Minneapolis Lakers' Big Three. Things had gotten so bad after Mikkelson retired that the Lakers were sold to new owners who relocated the team to Los Angeles after just 1 year with Mikkelson out of the lineup. But make no mistake, we can talk about various Big Threes in NBA history, and people can talk about which Big Three was the best. So the only thing I will add is that this Minneapolis Lakers Big Three deserve to be part of the conversation. And that is why we do this podcast in the first place. As I always say in my intro, we bring old school basketball to a new school audience. And let us not forget some of those early great players and early great teams. Now, if you were to take the Minneapolis Lakers Big Three and put them in a time machine and bring them to the modern NBA, would they be successful? Probably not. The players today are bigger, faster, stronger, and far more skilled than a 1950s counterpart. But that is not the fault of the players from the 1950s. They were the best of their era. Today's players have the advantage of building on the skills of those previous generations. Each generation takes the game a bit further and takes the skill level a bit higher and takes the athletic performance to areas that we have never seen before. Just as the players of the 1950s would probably not even make the league today, the players of today will probably not make the NBA from 70 years in the future. But again, they were the best of their era, and that's all we can ask. Well, that is it for today. Join us next week when we share another story from basketball history. That's next time on Basketball History 101, part of the Sports History Network, the headquarters of Sports Yesteryear. Go to sportshistorynetwork.com to find out more about this and other history podcasts. And check out our page on Facebook. It's called Basketball History 101 Podcast. There you will find short historical posts, and I'll also announce there when new episodes come out. I want to thank my producer and editor, Jacob Loayza. Join us each week as we continue to mine the history of basketball for more great stories from the past. Take care, and see you soon.
This podcast is part of the Sports History Network, your headquarters for the yesteryear of your favorite sport. You can learn more at sportshistorynetwork.com.
The Sports History Network, where legends live on and the past plays loud. Welcome to the place where history's proud, from gridiron glory to the hardwood stars, from the racetrack heat to Olympic bars. It's the voices, the stories, the moments you miss, told by fans and pros who live for this. Hook and Themic, the Sports History Network, where the past comes alive. Podcasts and blogs that keep the flame high, from Babe to Brady, Alley to the Dome. If it's history and sports, then this is the home. SportsHistoryNetwork.com, the headquarters of Sports Yesteryear.